It was supposed to be a night of celebration, a birthday party for my wife, a night to honor the years we'd spent together and the life we had built. The air was filled with the familiar warmth of friends and family gathered around, laughter dancing between each conversation, glasses of wine clinking together in shared joy. I had arrived earlier, excited to see her radiant smile, ready to enjoy the evening. But I had no idea that this night would change everything. As the evening unfolded, I began to notice subtle shifts in her demeanor. There was a lightness in her voice when she spoke of someone I didn't know, a shift in her posture when her eyes locked onto him across the room. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But then, the moment I dreaded, the moment I could never have prepared for, arrived. My wife, in front of everyone, with a poised smile and a soft, sincere tone, publicly thanked another man. The words felt like a slap across my face, each syllable a betrayal that echoed in the pit of my stomach. I want to thank James for his kindness and support over the past year, she said, smiling at him. You've been such a great friend. I don't know how I would have gotten through without you. It was like a knife slicing through everything I had ever believed about our marriage. The person I had trusted, loved, and sacrificed so much for had just reduced me to nothing. The man she praised wasn't just some distant friend. He had been a constant presence in our lives. His name casually dropped in conversations, his hand often touching her shoulder, lingering longer than it should. In that moment, I saw it, the reality I had been blind to for so long. Her affection, her support, her gratitude. It wasn't for me. It was for him. She had shared the life we had built together with someone else. My chest tightened, and the room, once filled with laughter and joy, became a suffocating prison. I looked around the table, the familiar faces of our closest friends and family. But it all felt like a dream, a facade. My wife had just celebrated him in front of everyone, and I was left there, hollow and exposed. I could feel the humiliation seeping into my skin, like cold water pouring into my soul. How had I missed this? Had I been so blinded by love that I failed to see the subtle betrayals? I had worked so hard to build our life, to provide for us. And now, this public display of affection for another man was the breaking point. The minutes that followed felt like hours. I sat there, frozen in place, as the sound of her voice thanking him played over and over in my head. The room was alive with laughter, the clinking of glasses, but inside I felt dead. My mind raced, betrayal, anger, sadness, and confusion, all swirling together. How could she do this to me? Why did she choose him, of all people, to praise? The night had barely started, but I knew, deep down, that I couldn't stay. Every second I spent in that restaurant felt like a lie. The trust I had built with her, the love I had invested in this marriage, had been shattered beyond repair. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. The noise cut through the chatter in the room, and all eyes turned toward me. My wife looked at me, a puzzled expression flickering across her face. But I couldn't stay, not another second. I'm sorry. I need to leave, I said quietly, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. She didn't even have time to respond before I turned and walked toward the door. As I stepped outside into the cold night air, the weight of what had just transpired hit me like a truck. I could feel the coldness wrapping around me. But in that moment, it felt freeing. The wind whipped through my hair, and I took a deep breath. This was it. I had made my decision. But there was one more thing I had to do. I walked back to the car, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and sadness, but also a strange sense of power. I had to reclaim what was mine, my dignity, my self-respect. I opened the car door, and there it was, the small gift she had given me that very night. A beautiful piece of jewelry, a token of affection, or so I thought. With a heavy heart, I pulled the gift out of my pocket and stared at it. This wasn't just about a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of everything I had worked for, everything I had given to her and our relationship. But now it felt like an empty gesture, a reminder of everything I had sacrificed only to be cast aside. The night air felt colder now, but the weight of my decision was strangely liberating. As I drove away from the restaurant, the city lights blurred into streaks of light, like the past, fading away in my rearview mirror. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white, the hum of the engine steady beneath me. But inside, my mind raced. How had I gotten here? 4 years of marriage, building a life together. And this was how it ended, with a thank you to another man. A man who had no place in our shared world. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had given up over the years. I had sacrificed my personal life, my desires, even my career to build something for us. A future where we could both thrive. Yet, none of that mattered to her. She had taken everything I had done, everything I had worked for, and made it feel irrelevant. In one simple sentence, I couldn't shake the memory of her smile as she thanked him. It wasn't just a thank you. It was an admission of something deeper. She had chosen him. Maybe it wasn't overt, but it was there, hidden behind her words and gestures. And now I realized I had to let go. This wasn't just about a betrayal. It was about reclaiming my self-respect. I drove around aimlessly for a while, not sure where to go, not sure what I was looking for. But in the solitude of the night, a sense of clarity began to emerge. I couldn't continue living like this. For years, I had ignored the small signs, the moments where I felt distant from her, where our connection seemed to be fading. I had chosen to believe the best in her, to overlook the cracks in our relationship. But tonight, those cracks had widened into an irreparable chasm. When I finally arrived home, the house felt different. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a reminder of everything I had invested, everything I had lost. The gifts we had shared, the photos of us smiling at family gatherings, the memories of good times. They all seemed like distant echoes. The woman I once loved, the partner I thought I'd have for life, was no longer the person I saw standing before me. I walked in and found her sitting on the couch, looking up at me with a confused, almost expectant expression. "I don't know what you're thinking right now," she said, her voice unsure. "But we can talk about this." Talk! How could we talk? What was there to say? I looked at her, and in that moment, all the words I had been holding back for years, all the anger, the hurt, the confusion, came rushing to the surface. "You really don't get it, do you?" I said, my voice low but firm. "You thanked another man in front of everyone, like I wasn't even there, like I was just a footnote in this story. Do you even know how much that hurt?" Her face shifted, and I could see the faintest trace of guilt, only it didn't last long. "It wasn't like that," she said quickly. "Defensive. You're overreacting. Overreacting." How many times had I heard that? How many times had she dismissed my feelings, ignored my concerns, made me feel like I was too sensitive, too demanding? "No," I said, shaking my head. "It is not overreacting. You've been distancing yourself for a while now, and I didn't want to see it. But now, I can't ignore it anymore. You've already made your choice. And I'm not going to keep fighting for a relationship that you don't value anymore." She stood up now, her posture stiff, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You're just going to walk away after everything?" "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "Because I've given all I can, and I'm done." The days that followed were a blur of emotions and decisions that I never thought I'd have to make. I moved out of our shared home, leaving behind the life I had worked so hard to build. But as I packed up the remnants of our relationship, there was a sense of relief in the chaos. I was finally taking control of my own life. For the first time in years, I felt free. I spent the first few days alone, reflecting on everything that had happened. I revisited old journals, read through past messages, and confronted the painful reality of how much I had lost. But amidst the sadness, I also realized something. I was stronger than I had ever given myself credit for. The pain of betrayal was still fresh, and there were moments when the loneliness threatened to swallow me whole. But I refused to let it. I refused to let this define me. I had spent too long living in someone else's shadow, too long compromising my own dreams for the sake of someone else's happiness. I started exercising again, something I had let slip while I was busy trying to hold everything together. The morning runs gave me clarity, a chance to focus on myself and what I truly wanted. I reconnected with old friends, people who had always believed in me, who had seen the version of me I had nearly forgotten. And slowly, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just healing from a heartbreak. I was rebuilding myself from the ground up. My career, which I had sacrificed so much for, became my focus again. I took on new projects, pitched ideas I had put off, and watched as my professional life began to take shape once more. The sense of pride that had once been diminished by her demands and expectations slowly returned. I started to thrive, not because I was seeking revenge, but because I had rediscovered the person I was meant to be. In the following weeks, I focused on my personal growth. I took up new hobbies, traveled to places I had always wanted to visit, and started living for me. The pain of betrayal still lingered. But each day I grew stronger. And the more I worked on myself, the more I realized that I didn't need anyone to define my worth. I had reclaimed my life. I turned, and without a second thought, I walked back into the restaurant. Her face was still lit with excitement as she spoke with friends. But when she saw me standing there, holding the gift, her expression faltered. "I'm taking this back," I said, my voice steady. No trace of the man who had once been willing to forgive everything. I handed her the jewelry, placing it in her hand with a calm finality. Her eyes widened, and she opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't give her the chance. "You can keep everything else, but this is mine. I'm done," I added. With those words, I turned on my heel and walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind the life I had once thought I'd never live. Weeks passed, and I found myself moving forward in ways I never imagined. The intense pain from that fateful night had gradually softened. Though it had not been forgotten, it became part of me, a scar that I wore not out of shame, but as a reminder of my strength and resilience. The first month after I left, her felt like a strange new life, one where everything was up for grabs. I was free from the expectations, free from the manipulation for the first time in years. I wasn't tethered to someone else's vision of who I should be. As I settled into my new life, I began to feel a new kind of clarity. I had spent years defining myself by my marriage, by the life we were supposed to build together. I had been so invested in us that I lost sight of me. But now, without the weight of a relationship that no longer served me, I could finally breathe. I could make decisions for myself, pursue the passions I had buried under the weight of responsibility, and explore the potential I had kept hidden for so long. I threw myself into my work, as I had before, but now, with a renewed sense of purpose. The promotions I had once only dreamed of were finally becoming a reality. I was trusted with bigger projects, leading teams, and coming up with ideas that changed the way things were done. I was no longer the man who had been told to sacrifice for the sake of someone else's happiness. I was the man who defined success on his own terms. Every new opportunity was a testament to my own efforts, and I began to realize that I had the power to shape my destiny. But it wasn't just professional success that fueled my transformation. My personal growth became just as important. I reconnected with old friends who had always supported me, but whom I had distanced myself from over the years. We shared stories, laughs, and plans for the future. I sought out new friendships, genuine connections with people who respected my independence and supported my ambitions. One night, I found myself sitting with a close friend, talking about everything that had happened. She had been there for me, offering a listening ear when I needed it most. I could see the pride in her eyes as I recounted how far I had come. "You've changed," she said. "You've grown into someone I always knew you could be." Her words hit me harder than I expected. She was right. I was no longer the man who let others dictate his life. I had found my voice again, and I had found the courage to live life on my own terms. The moment of truth. One morning, I received a message from an old colleague. She had heard about my promotion and wanted to congratulate me. We met up for coffee, and as we sat down together, she asked me about the past few months. I told her the truth, and as I did, something inside me clicked. It wasn't just the success that mattered. It was the growth, the understanding that I could walk away from the things that no longer serve me, and I could rebuild better than before. I shared my story about the betrayal, about the pain I had endured, and how it had led me to this place. My colleague listened attentively, and when I finished, she smiled. "You've got a story to tell," she said. "Your journey isn't just about business or career success. It's about finding your strength in the face of adversity. It's about reclaiming yourself when life tries to take you down." Her words resonated with me deeply. I had always focused on success, on the external achievements that validated my worth. But now I realized that true success wasn't about how much I had earned or how high I had climbed in my career. It was about the inner transformation. It was about becoming a man who could stand alone, unshaken by the forces that had tried to break him. The power of letting go. It was at this point that I truly understood what it meant to forgive, not for the sake of the other person, but for myself. I didn't need to carry the weight of my past any longer. I didn't need to hold on to the bitterness or the anger that had once consumed me. I had let go of the woman who had broken my heart, and I had let go of the life that we had built together. I realized that I had been holding on to a version of love that no longer existed. The love I once had was tainted by betrayal, by manipulation, and by a lack of respect. It wasn't real anymore. And as I let go of that old version of love, I made room for a new, healthier understanding of what love could be. In the weeks that followed, I continued to thrive. I took on new challenges, expanded my horizons, and deepened the connections that mattered. Every small victory in my personal and professional life reinforced my belief that I was on the right path. I was living for myself now, and that made all the difference. A new chapter begins. The future looked different now. It wasn't clouded by doubt, shame, or betrayal. I had turned the page, and I was writing a new story. One where I was the hero. The pain and heartbreak were still part of my past, but they no longer had the power to define me. I was the one in control, and I would never let anyone or anything take that power away from me again. As the months passed, I continued to focus on the things that mattered most. My career was thriving. My personal life was full of meaningful connections, and I had learned to embrace the freedom that came from living authentically. I had learned the most important lesson of all, that no matter how deep the betrayal, no matter how overwhelming the hurt, I had the power to rise above it. I was stronger now, more resilient than I had ever been, and as I moved forward, I knew that nothing could stand in the way of my future. The road ahead was still unknown, but I was no longer afraid. I had already overcome the greatest challenge of my life, and I was ready for whatever came next.